It was, so don't take it the wrong way. I'm not telling you, this is full disclaimer here, full disclosure. Don't necessarily do what I did. It's just stories of what I did and strategies of what I did that worked for me to build wealth. They may work for you, they may not work for you. So just take it with a grain of salt. And if you can apply some of it, great. But when it comes to leverage, I have a business coach, Louis Schiff. He's out of the Inc. 5000 out of New York. And the Inc. 5000 is the top non-publicly traded companies, right? And he wrote a book called Business Brilliant, and he's a great data guy. But one of the things he always hounded on me was, what is the one thing that you're gonna leverage this year or in the next 6 to 12 months, business-wise, personally? And really what he's getting at is the hunt for leverage. We're all on this hunt for leverage, whether we know it or not. So what are you gonna leverage this year? Is it gonna be technology? Is it gonna be capital? Is it gonna be education? Is it gonna be a JV partner? Is it going to be all kinds of things you can leverage, right? So think about what you can 10x to take things to the next level, or what is the one thing that's inhibiting you, that's stopping you? So it was kind of fun writing this book because in the real estate business, it's a finance-driven business, and there's a lot of financial strategies and finance hacks, I call them, that you can incorporate to really accelerate your business. Because I was the typical guy on my way to having 100 houses and a bunch of units. But what I found out is if I utilized financing in the right ways, I could maybe own fewer properties and still get the same kind of wealth that I was trying to achieve. So you get the concept a little bit. So finding leverage. So your first note, who wants to tell me what their first note was? I should pick on some of you, especially sitting up there. What was your first note? Okay. Anybody else? Their first note? Small business loan. So my first note was a common first note. It was a student loan. Anybody want to guess what my student loan looked like? I know, it's scary. It was $5,800 at 6.12% for 10 years, and my payment was $65 a month. So what does that tell you besides how old I am? And you know, I was bitching about that back then. And you know why? It took me 10 years to pay it off. I was 32, I had a wife and 2 kids, and you know what? It still sucked writing that check to the student loan payment. But Kathy Fecky brought up something pretty interesting yesterday. What was it? It was that the differential is so much different. It was 10 to 20% of your income versus 5%. And mine was only 10 years, right? Whereas my son's could be 20 years, right? Now, I am doing a breakout session later this afternoon, and I actually do a little thing where I can show you how to pay about a third. That's what I did with my son. We paid about a third of what his college really cost just by using a finance strategy. So I'm not going to do that right now, but if that's something that interests you, you know, we can hit it up in the breakout, because you might have children or grandchildren or yourself or whatever. And I also have a strategy of why I hope interest rates go up. Anybody else hope interest rates go up besides me? So we'll talk about that at the breakout, right? Before we get too far into it, I like to tell a story about opportunity, and usually when I do that, I change the story. So today, I guess you know how a lot of times it's luck, or we make our own luck, right? It's kind of a combination. And the way I got started in the institutional note space, anybody want to guess? It was by accident. It was never meant to happen. It was the time before meetups had started, and we used to do it the old-fashioned way. We would just have actually round tables like this. We'd break bread, have dinner, get to know each other, and we'd have a meeting, a real estate meeting, but we could bring deals. But I used to interview the speakers, and one of the speakers came down from New York, and guess what they were doing? They were raising capital to buy pools, delinquent mortgages. And you know what I did? Nothing, for like 3 years. But I had a partner who did, invested some money, and he was getting paid some crazy returns. We're like, how the hell is this guy doing it? And then right before the crash in 2007, we decided to reach out to that person and say, hey, show us how to collect on delinquent debt, and we'll buy assets from you. And the rest is kind of history. And, obviously today, I'm president and CEO of PPR. We have 31 employees. We have over 100 million under management. But it didn't start out that way. It started out with a couple guys as investors, putting up a little bit of money, and one thing led to another. And then we were like clubbish, and then we were like a little business, and now we're hoping to become $1 billion company at some point, and we're really set up to do that, which is kind of fun. So it's more of an enduring enterprise type thing. So it's interesting how these opportunities come our way, but if you're not ready to take advantage of the opportunity, what happens? It just kind of goes right on by. You got to be ready to receive the opportunity. So sometimes that means getting educated, networking with people, shadowing someone else's deal, whatever that is. I'm a strong believer in not using your own capital till you kind of know what you're doing. I don't recommend that. A lot of people say, oh, jump in and do it. Well, you can jump in. You don't have to necessarily lose a lot of money when you jump in, right? You can follow someone else's deal. So besides just being a CEO, I still have a lot of properties. I still have a private note fund. We have thousands of mortgages. We own about a couple hundred REO properties throughout the U.S. So a lot of people, they own, it's like owning 100 properties locally. Picture owning a couple hundred spread out all over the place. A little harder to imagine. I'm also a dad, a husband. I wish I could say these are my kids. They're not. They're actually my grandkids. And there's a fourth one now. They call me G-Pop. But you get the idea. I wish they were my kids. Is it okay to love your grandkids more than your regular kids? Is that okay?
No.
Don't tell them I said that. Is that being recorded? OPM. So what do you think my second note was? You're on the right track, right? What I'm trying to allude to is you're all in the note business, you just don't realize it. My second note was a credit card. It was a Sears credit card. Why Sears? Because I can fix my car so I can get to work. But really what happened with me in credit cards was I went to take a course in real estate investing towards my real estate broker's license. So I'm at night school, right? Picture that, right? And I go into this class, and the teacher, first night, goes, how many people in here have credit cards? All the hands go up. And he goes, how many people in here buy houses with credit cards? And all the hands went down. And this guy picks up our textbook, walks over to the trash can, throws it in the trash. And he goes, we won't be needing that tonight. So I remember going home and telling my wife, I go, we're gonna buy some houses with credit cards. And what do you think my wife said? That's not going to affect my ability to go to the mall, is it? I said, no, that's a different credit card, don't worry. No, but in all honesty, it worked. I started buying, I would write myself a credit card check, deposit it in my account, go pay cash for a house. I was a realtor. I was a painting contractor. I knew how to fix up property. What didn't I have? Capital. So all of a sudden I had capital. It's like giving whiskey to the Indians. So I would pay cash for a house, fix it up, move a tenant in, refinance the house, pay the credit cards off. And what do you think happened? They up your limits. Your credit score goes up. Next thing you know, I had 400 grand in credit cards. I could buy pretty much anything I wanted back then. Do I recommend doing that today? No, it's a different world. There are different types of credit cards. Fees are really high. Cash advance fees are high. Back then it was like free money. They didn't really have these cash advance fees like they do today. So it was great. We had a field day. And what was cool about it is, what do you think happened next? Property values jumped up. Next thing you know, you have a lot of equity. Purposeful planning. There's probably only a handful of things that I did that really changed my world, that really built my wealth. And one of them was saving money on taxes. Now that seems obvious. I was an accounting major in college for 3 years, but I hated it. Any accountants in here? I hated accounting, sorry. Oh yeah, that's right. And I switched to management, and today I oversee more accounting than I care to mention, right? But if you really think about the IRS, they give us a couple tax breaks, really, and what's it for? Jobs, housing, charity. They're probably the biggest three that come to mind, right? So when, I was with Al Williamson, where's he at? I want to pick him. We were having dinner and he was like, we were talking about taxes. If you're paying too much in taxes, it's usually a structure issue. It's the way you're set up. These things can actually be dealt with in most cases. If you're overpaying in taxes, something's not right. And really, you can dig into that and figure that out. But there's all kinds of things. One of the things, I'm still a realtor today. I've been a realtor over 30 years. Do you think I'm a good realtor? Where's Darren Sager? He'll tell you, I'm the worst realtor in town. Why am I a realtor? Because it's unlimited passive losses. I can offset earned income with depreciation from all the properties I own. So I'll probably always be a realtor. Is it a pain in the ass to do continuing ed? Yeah, but it saves me a lot of money. But think about your 1031 exchanges, your IRA accounts, your qualified plans, all the different things you can set up to limit taxation. Because every dollar you save in taxes is another dollar to invest. Think if you had all the money that you sent in taxes to invest, we'd all be wealthy, right? This idea of purposeful planning, I was a financial planner for a short period of time. I sold insurance as well as real estate. I owned a title company. I did a lot of things like that. But this concept of investing intentionally, we were just talking about this with Neil Bala. Do you realize the percentage of investors that don't know their exit when they go into an investment? Think about real estate. It's almost like 100%. They're like, well, let's wait and see what happens. But really, shouldn't you know your exit before you get into an investment? Look how many people invest in their primary residence without intentionally investing. And that was one of the goofy little things I did that I didn't realize I was doing. I bought my first property owner occupied. I still own it today. I bought it in 1989. Right? So think about how powerful that is. I know there's an accountant back there, right? That's it. And what happens in most cases? People will buy their first place, and they buy as much house as they can get, or they rent as much house as they can get. Scott Trench was alluding to this yesterday. They don't really set money aside to be able to save something, right? They put everything they got into housing. And then the next thing you know, they go in and they move up into the next house, and they get rid of the first house. I just kept them all, and kept them as rentals in the beginning. Now, this might not be as easy to do in the Bay Area. I get where I'm at, right? What's the odds? Unless you're house hacking, you got bunk beds and stuff in your house hack or something. I get there's a big discrepancy in rents and values here, but it can be done elsewhere. But if you're not from here and you can do that, it's powerful, right? Because that bucket of wealth can get really big if you kept the houses that you lived in, even if you waited an extra year or so before you moved to the next one. Because think about what the accountant's telling you. By the time you do that, as a financial planner and realtor, looking back and looking at people's lives, they're getting married, they get divorced, they're moving on, they pass away, they go in nursing homes, they do all these things. But what happens? If they're doing well, they bought and sold, bought and sold, bought and sold. Now they're 45 to 55, they're doing pretty well, they're in a big property, and what's the accountant telling them? Mr. Accountant, you need a beach house, right? Or you need a duplex, you're doing well, you need the write-offs. Now, this accountant might not tell you that, he's pretty sharp, but some of the other accountants, isn't that typical though? Didn't you already own those rental properties, potentially? It could have been, if you bought a condo or a townhouse. Could easily have been a rental that you already were in, with owner-occupied financing, a favorable rate, plus you might have lived there 5 or 10 years, right? You're into that towards the 30-year loan. How cool would that be to convert that to a rental? Another way to look at investing intentionally, a buddy of mine, I was thinking to Jay Heinrich yesterday when he was doing the thing with the lots. I don't know if anybody was in that class or whatever. A builder friend of mine did this, and this is what I mean by investing intentionally. He had a 13-lot subdivision. He built a sample house. He makes it real pretty. He furnishes it. Guess what he did next? He moves in it. He builds the other 12 houses. Guess what he sells? the sample house for a good buck. He planned that right out of the gate. He wrote everything off, moved in it, lived there 2 of the last 5 years. Mr. Accountant, is that a good idea to do that? Can be. You build a nice house and they're not throwing rocks at you, but you see that's investing intentionally with a real game plan. He could walk away with $500,000, is it, and gain, and him and his wife, and they don't have to pay any tax on it, right? That's strategic, that's intentional investing. Most people miss that. Accumulation mode. Do you think most investors are in accumulation mode? I know I was. Aren't we always trying to buy more and more? But it doesn't mean you can't pay down debt. So you hear the great debate on bigger pockets a lot. Thank God I don't talk to Ben about this. This could go back and forth. You pay down debt or you leverage, Ben? You pay down debt or you leverage, right? It's a big debate. But can you do both? Can you accelerate to pay down the debt? Are any of you guys familiar with sweep accounts, for example? You can pay off about any 30-year loan in about 10, 12 years with the same cash flow. Does everybody realize how that's done? You're kind of using a home equity loan, and you use it as a checking account, basically. And as you pay it down, you pay extra money towards the first, right? I'm not saying you have to do that. It makes more sense if you don't have any other investments that pay a higher yield than the interest rate on your first, right? But say you don't. Say you're pretty, that's all you have. It's still not a bad strategy to accelerate the pay down the debt, even while you're in accumulation mode. You'll build a lot more wealth quicker. Preservation mode. A lot of real estate investors, I think, miss this piece. They just go accumulate, accumulate, accumulate. One time I was listening to a guy speak locally to me in Philadelphia, and he's like, yeah, I got 125 houses. He's like 70 years old. He goes, any questions? I go, yeah, what's your end game? He's like, no, he didn't know what to say. It was like crickets. He goes, well, I guess I'll leave them to my daughter. I'm like, you don't like your daughter? I'm thinking to myself, like, you didn't think this through. Like, you're just going, I'm assuming she'll fire sale them. That's usually what happens, right? To Jay Scott or somebody. So think about planning some of this stuff, especially, most people don't want to think about it, I get it. But you want to plan your exit, and you want to come up with a game plan for your properties and how you plan to exit. And you also want to think about preserving your assets, right? So, what can you do? Real estate investors, a lot of them have caveman mentality, I call it, like contractor mentality, and I can say that because I was a contractor. We had this mentality where we just, invest, right? We never sweep money off the table into safer buckets, whether it's IRA accounts or qualified plans or insurance contracts. There's other buckets you can drop capital into that's safer, because what happens in all markets? It's this. Well, it's going to happen again. It's just when, right? If you're around long enough, it's going to happen, right? So think about sweeping some of the money off the table and putting it into some other safe buckets, right? Working your equity. So this was another thing that I did. I just didn't know I was doing it. So, remember those credit card houses and some of the other properties I was buying? Next thing you know, I had 40 places, and I have a couple million in equity. And a lot of people were like afraid to leverage that. I get it. But can't you do it safely? I know you heard the concept of good debt and bad debt. What's the problem with it these days? It's getting a little blurry, right? What is good debt? If I buy a car, is it good debt? Not usually. But if I buy a truck for my business, it could be. If I take a student loan, is it good debt? It used to be. If it takes 20 years to be an indentured servant, is it just as good, depending on what your major is, right? The game's changing. It's getting blurrier. But think about reserves. How much is adequate reserves when you buy a house, a multifamily, whatever? How much reserves? How much reserves do I set aside for my liquidity fund? I always think about reserves. When you hear people, do you ever have any family members that say, I would never do what you do, I'd never invest in real estate? Let alone notes. I would never do that. Why? How many real estate investors do you say real estate investing sucks? But it was probably because they didn't have reserves, right? Because if a couple heaters go and a couple roofs go, yeah, real estate does suck if you don't have any reserves, right? I was lucky. One of the guys that trained me was top dog agent in my office, and he had like 25 properties, and I watched him lose them all. But that was, a long time ago with minimum down. You used to be able to have an FHA investor loan. He did all kinds of crazy stuff, and he lost them all. But I learned a lesson. He had no reserves. Asset protection through debt. There's another important piece to this, the cousin. It's called liquidity. So this is something that this concept was, a real estate attorney taught me probably 20, 25 years ago. And what she said was, even if your house is paid off, you should think about having a line against it, whether you use it or not. And it was because of asset protection through debt and liquidity. So I'll give you a couple examples. I had a plumber buddy, a guy I grew up with, went to high school and grade school with. He borrowed money out of his primary residence to do what? A fix and flip. Guess what happened? He took a heart attack, was out of work 9 months. Almost lost the $1 million house he lived in with his wife and 2 daughters. Why? Because he wanted to save a couple points in interest. That's why, because a home equity loan's cheap. I know real estate investors are cheap. I am one. But what was wrong with that picture? He could have done something different, right? He could have used private money or hard money. Now, isn't the rate higher on that? Yeah. But what I started to realize, was the rate worth the risk on a short-term loan? And the answer is, it really isn't. Because what would have happened if he used private money in that deal? He could have given the house back to the private money lender, right? Probably wouldn't have affected his credit. He wouldn't have jeopardized his house. But what else could he have done if he had a line of credit on his house? He could have done some more appropriate investing. Maybe it's a hard money deal. Maybe it was a note. Maybe it was something more liquid. Maybe it was something more short term. Something more in line with the adjustable rate of that home equity line of credit. Right? Would have been a lot better that way, right? Because aren't you building wealth twice as fast if you do that? Because now you can do the private money loan and that deal. You're building twice as fast. Pretty powerful, if you think about it. Is it really worth the risk? Now, I've done that. I've taken a home equity loan and done another real estate project. But I would never do that today. Just for that reason. Because it's kind of out of sync, if it makes sense. Now, when you look at the idea of the asset protection through debt piece, what's important there if it's a $1 million property and you have an $800,000 first on it, who's in control of that deal? It's the bank, right? What happens if I owed $100,000 and I had $700,000 of a home equity line of credit? You might say the bank has the same collateral, so to speak, but what's really different there? It's a control thing, right? Who's in control of that money? You are. Night and day difference. You can go do whatever you want with that money, right? So that change out of paying down that type of debt and replacing it is powerful. If I get sued and you go to the county courthouse and I owe 90% against my property, 80 or 90%, what does the attorney see, even if I have a zero balance on the line of credit? That I owe the full amount, right? That's what we mean by asset protection through debt. Now, I'm not saying that's the only asset protection you can do, but it is a start, right? So access to capital is important. So if you're able to get a line of credit and you're qualified and you're working and you're healthy and you have a job, maybe you should put lines in place for the rainy day, even if you don't really want to use it. So today I was going to talk a little bit about some creative strategies. A lot of times I'll change it up and just take something out of the book and talk a little bit about one of them. Obviously, lending private money, most of you should, I imagine, in this type of group would know what that is. It was one of the ways that I got started in notes. Any hard money lenders in here or private money lenders? Hopefully there is, especially in the Bay Area, right? It's a good way to do it. You get a lot of appreciation, you can tap into that, you can lend money out, right? It's a great way to, In my case, what do you think happened when I got to 2 and 3 million? If I had 2 million in equity and I was able to access 80% of that, and I lent it out at 14%, and I was paying 4, I'm making $160,000 a year. Well, that was an okay salary for me back then. It wasn't a bad little deal on the side, right? So it's not so shabby. So lending private money, just do it right. Just make sure you have the right paperwork. Make sure if you need a license, out west here, a lot of times you have to have a originator's license or whatever. Seller financing was probably the second way I first got into notes. So a lot of times, I have properties that I fixed and flipped, and I still own a second on it, and it's been 10, 15 years. I'm still collecting payments. Anybody else besides me like to collect payments on houses they used to own? It's sweet. How about when you go to buy? So, a lot of you might already do this. I don't know. I just elaborate on it a little bit. Do you make multiple offers on the same property when you go to buy? And you probably should. Now, you gotta listen to the seller. I'm not saying make 42 offers to somebody. I don't recommend that. That could be confusing. But if you're listening to a seller and they're in distress or whatever that is, and you can think of some creative strategies that might impact them, make a few offers, and of course they all work for you, right? So lease options. I don't know how popular lease options are out here. Does everybody know what a lease option is? It's a rent to own. I don't know how well they work here because you might not get enough rent, but maybe there are parts of California it works, or in other areas you invest in. I was having dinner with a gentleman, he was investing in Indianapolis, right? So a lease option absolutely works in Indianapolis, right? Because the numbers are different. Here's a property that I sold to a guy. Now some of these numbers, just add a 0. We're in San Francisco, just add a 0. I sold him this property for 45 grand, and here's what happened to this guy. He fixes it up, and he moves a tenant in, and guess what happens? He destroy it, move out. I love these stories. So what did I do to help him out? Now, actually, he fixed it up again. He puts it on the market to sell it. Guess what happens? It's not selling. Then I came in and talked to him, right? So I ended up doing a deal with him. His payment was right around $700 a month. It was just a hair under. I gave him a deposit. Sometimes you get away with a smaller deposit. I knew the guy, I didn't mind. But really, I was a property manager at the time, and I had a property down the road, and I had a couple that were moving out of the apartment because they wanted to get a house. I said, how have I got the house for you? How would you like to try to buy it? So it was a sweet little way to make, back then, if we could make $300 or $400 a month positive on a house, that was good for us, because we were in that type of market where we could do that regularly. But what's nice about this is I don't have to own the house. I can make a spread on it. I can make a couple $100 a month. This I actually locked up for a 5-year rent to own. And I turned around to this other couple, the tenant buyer. You can see I was getting $950 a month, and I got a $3,000 deposit. It sold it for $95,000. So it's what happens if this couple doesn't go through with it? Not much. I mean, I could do it again and sell it to somebody else, or I can turn around after 5 years and I can even give it back. Say, nah, it didn't work out. Is that valuable if the property value falls? Could be. What if the house fell in value because of the market, right? So this is something, not to go learn lease options from Wendy Patton and go out and do it, but it's nice to have different tools in your toolbox when you are negotiating or you're coming up with multiple offers, and you can incorporate some of these strategies. Now, a lease option doesn't really have much to do with notes, but it's more about a control thing, and sometimes control is more important than ownership. And I think real estate investors get stuck on ownership too much sometimes. Subject 2. Well, this is the real sexy topic. Everybody likes to talk about subject 2. Why? Because they think they can buy a house with no money. But is that really true? We're going to talk about that a little bit. Yeah, you can take over. It's similar to cash, right? Here's a house I was involved with subject 2, but not in the way you would think. As PPR note company, how many subject to deals do you think we do? Hundreds. Why? Because we buy second mortgages a lot of times, right? And when you own a second mortgage, especially in California, and you foreclose from second position, what happens? You're taking the property back subject to the first mortgage. Do I have to pay off the first mortgage? No. No. Can the first foreclose on me? Yeah. But can I reinstate it? Yeah. So a lot of times it's about controlling the sale and having my attorney have bid for me so that I don't get, if the first gets ahead of me and their attorney bids just to cover their amount, I get wiped. But if I can reinstate them, they have to start their foreclosure over, and now it buys me time to fix it up, rent it out, sell it, whatever that is, right? But that's not what happened here. This was a subject to near where I'm from, outside Philadelphia, and I was the agent. And the only reason I'm talking about subject to today is why is subject to worth talking about right now? Because we're in a relatively up market. Does subject to work well in a down market? No! You don't want to do subject to if there's no equity or anything at all, right? It's a bad deal. How do you know the difference of when to use a lease option versus a subject to? What do you think my rules were? When would you not use a rent to own? When the property needs too much work. Perfect example. If I have to put a significant amount of money into it, I want the deed. So in this particular case, I was the agent, and when I first went to the house, it was a shambles, and it looked like the hoarders lived there. And it was an old guy, he wanted to retire to Delaware, live with his daughter. He wanted too much money for the house and the condition it was in. Any realtors know what that's like? Would you rather sell the banged up hoarder house, or would you rather sell the fixed up house? At the time, I didn't have the bandwidth to take it on myself, but I had a buddy, Tom, who did. He had bought property before subject to. So my buddy Tom came in and negotiated a deal to take over subject to. So this property was worth $145 at the time. If you notice, the rate was high back then, but don't worry about what the rate is. In most cases, it's cheaper than hard money, right? And sometimes, like in this case, the old guy lived there a while, right? So that means on the amortization schedule, you're well into that loan, and the majority of your payment is actually principal, right? So, you can see he did 28 repairs and sold it for $2.25. It's almost like buying a cash when you do a subject to. And really, it's just a clause. You know how you have a clause subject to my partner's inspection, right? Well, this is subject to the existing loan, basically, you spell out those terms. Sure, you might need an attorney on the first one, but you get the idea. Good for the buyer, no qualifying, low closing costs, better terms. Good for the seller, move immediately, no cleaning or repairs, no inspections. Move immediately, right? Improve the credit and brought the loan current for the seller. Today with automation, you can all check in on the account, see what's being paid, it's easy to do. Pitfalls, existing liens, hold title. Due on sale clause. That's why you may need access to cash, right? Could they exercise it? Yeah, they can. What triggers it a lot is insurance. Who should get the policy? Whoever has the deed. You can also be named insured jointly, and that will help alleviate possibly triggering that. Leave the seller's name on it, but also get homeowner authorization so you can speak on behalf of the loan if you do a subject to deal. Also get power of attorney. Why? In case there's an escrow, right? You want to grab that money when you sell the place. The escrow for taxes and insurance, you can have that mailed back to you and actually cash it if you have the power of attorney. I did mention I got into institutional notes by accident, but PPR, I guess you could say our why, is similar to Scott Trench's. It's financial freedom for our investors, for our note buyers. What our mission is, though, is community stabilization, right? Our goal is if we can do a loan mod for somebody and keep them in their house, that's great. If it's a boarded up vacant property and we can get it back into society on the tax rolls, that's great as well, right? That's really kind of what our mission is. But for our investors, it's really giving them a passive way to a real estate backed alternative investment. Some of the advantages of notes: passive cash flow, and it's truly passive, right? Volume and control. Would Bank of America rather own 30 million properties or 30 million loans? Loans, right? Profitable in various market conditions. Collateral in notes, right? You can, anytime you can buy something at a discount with a high yield with collateral, tends to beat the market. For me, anyway. It's versatile too. You can borrow against notes. You can sell a piece of a note. You can recapitalize very quickly. And I think a lot of real estate investors don't realize that. And it's socially conscious. You can help a homeowner stay in their home. Where do you find these? Online, right? Loan MLS, note brokers, Colonial Funding, and Mountain View Capital. There's all kinds of brokers out there. There's loan exchanges like FCI Exchange used to sell notes, right? There's note funds like PPR. There's hundreds of them. Banks and servicing companies, SN Servicing, BSI Servicing. All these outfits sell notes. Private sellers sell notes, like the Donna Bauer seller finance type stuff. Here's a second lien case study just to show you what a tape of loans would look like in our world, right? We might buy as many as 700 assets. This is actually a fairly recent deal. We check the security, the collateral, we use these different types of services, credit checks, bankruptcy scrubs. It's just part of our due diligence type stuff. But really what happens is we'll generate like 7.3 on a 4.7 purchase. We have expenses. The majority of our expenses are legal, the cost of capital. And you can see a deal like this, just under 5 million, we'd make like 1.2 million. We have 31 employees. I have 7 asset managers. They typically manage 200 to 400 loans at a clip. Just to give you a color. So ways to get started. A lot of people get started in performing notes because they're easy. We sell them with warranties. So if your loan went bad, we would either give you a foreclosure attorney or buy it back from you. Our refund policy is investment principal minus payments received. Note funds. We raise capital from high net worth folks, but there are note funds that you don't have to be high net worth. AHP, for example, you can invest $100 in a note fund. So it's pretty easy to get started. The advantage of note funds, though, is limited liability. You can't be sued, that type of thing. The fund could be sued, but you can't be sued. Non-performing notes, now it's you're getting a little, rolling up your sleeves, getting a little dirtier. You just want to be careful of the regulatory environment. Some people ask me why I didn't write a how-to book on collections. Well, I'll give you a color. For one state, our manual is that thick on policies and procedures, right? So you'd have 50 of them. It would be a little dry going over that with you. But doesn't mean you can't do it. You can focus on a particular state and find out what that is and do very well. Especially if you're buying first mortgages that are vacant, you're going to typically end up with the property, right? Seller financing is another great way. We touched on that. Private or hard money, it's a short-term commercial note. So a lot of people don't realize we're all in the note business. We're all, credit card debt, auto debt, medical debt, student loan debt. It's all around us. We're in the debt world. Whether you're playing the game or know you're playing the game, that's a different story, right? Peer-to-peer, the lending clubs of the world, right? Prosper.com. There's people in my office that'll run analytics. They'll run analytics on lending club. You can invest $20, $25 in a lending club note, right? So it doesn't take a ton of money to get started in notes. I don't know how much time I'll have to talk. He's probably going to give me the hook. But receivables, I can give you an example of receivables. I had an HVAC guy, and I said to him, we were out to lunch, I said, did you ever think of financing heaters? He goes, no, there's a company that does that. I go, yeah, I know. Did you ever think of it being your company? What's cool about that? He could finance heaters, get a deposit, cover the unit, finance the labor. What else does he get from that? He gets recurring revenue from service contracts, which increases the value of his business, right? But he could also own that with his IRA too, right? I had a dentist that did the same thing. I run a fund out of San Diego and I run one out of Dallas, and the one in Dallas is all physicians and doctors, dentists. I was out with this dentist, said the same thing. Did you ever think of financing dental work? No, there's a company that does that. Yeah, I know. So he ends up doing it with an orthodontist. They partner up. They did use their IRA accounts. Of course, they have to pay a little unit, but the point is, I saw him a year ago, and he started about 6 years ago, and he said to me, Dave, you're not going to believe this, but our finance company's worth more than my dental practice. Because what happened was all the other dentists in the group in Dallas, this mastermind group, all started giving him their business to finance the dental work because they'd rather give it to their buddy than a company they didn't know. So it can be powerful sometimes, these receivables. You can also do commercial notes on receivables for merchant accounts. Does everybody know what merchant accounts are? You can get like hard money rates investing in merchant accounts. Now you're investing in somebody's receivables, their payables. And why does that business exist? Because banks won't lend a business money usually unless they own a piece of real estate. Well, most businesses don't own the real estate and they need money to expand, or they need more trucks, or they need more equipment, or whatever. It's a great business to make fairly low default rates too. So you can invest in those types of commercial receivables. Notes paying liabilities. I know I'm definitely getting hooked now. So I'll leave you with one more story and we can save it for the breakout room. So I had a buddy who wanted to put an addition on his house. And I said, well, you could probably get a free addition. And he's like, really? I said, yeah, why don't you borrow extra and go buy a note or a hard money deal, right? So he went and bought a note or two, and the payment from the note can pay back the whole payment. And he ends up with a free addition. He just borrows a little extra, and it's a free addition. I have a couple more examples, but we can talk about them later if I am done. How much time do I got? I'm out of here?
Yeah, we're actually just running a little bit into lunch. Maybe we want to do one more question, and then also you're going to be doing a breakout session, I believe, after lunch. Sure. So he'll be in the breakout session. So we're going to take one more question, and then bring the rest of your questions to the breakout room just after lunch. So you want to do one more?
Sure. It's interesting you say that. So we've done hundreds of them. His question was, do we ever experience the due on sale clause as PPR, the note company, owning thousands of loans? I only had it happen one time, and it was with a deceased borrower. So the bank knew the person was deceased, and they weren't pushing the issue. But they still had to start foreclosure against us, and that could take a year or whatever. But you get the idea. So we had it happen one time, so it just almost never happens. Think about it. We buy first mortgages predominantly today. What do you think I think of when I see the junior liens foreclosing? Do you think I'm upset about that? No, I know I'm going to get paid. Like, I don't even care. I'm great. That's one less an asset manager has to work on, actually. Now, does everybody think like us? Probably not.
All right, I mean, we could talk about this forever, and actually there is a bigger opportunity to talk about this more again in the breakout session right afterwards. And if you have some more examples, we can go through those maybe in this other session. So please give a big round of applause for Dave Van Horn. We appreciate it. And right now we're going to have lunch, so if you are a speaker, a meetup leader, a VIP ticket holder, lunch is